When young Milarepa left his home in Gungthang, he carried with him his mother's terrible charge and a small store of provisions bought with half a pond field. He was little more than a boy, and his heart was heavy with hatred. He had been sent for a single purpose, to learn the dark arts of destruction, and to bring ruin upon the uncle and aunt who had stolen everything and humiliated his family before the whole village. He set out toward the lowlands in search of a master who could teach him sorcery. After a long and uncertain journey, he found his way to a lama who was known to possess the power of black magic, a man skilled in deadly spells, in the casting of hail, and in the calling down of misfortune. Milarepa came before him, bowed low, and offered everything he had. He told the truth of his suffering, the death of his father, the theft of his inheritance, the years of servitude, the beatings, the scorn. He did not hide his purpose. He wanted power to take revenge, and he wanted it completely. At first the master tested him and taught him only small things, partial spells that would frighten but not kill. Milarepa served him faithfully through the seasons, working hard, asking for nothing but the deepest teaching. The master grew fond of this earnest, sorrowful youth and saw how genuine his devotion was. In the end, he gave him the full and most dangerous instruction, the spell that could bring down a house and slay those within it. Milarepa shut himself away to practice it. For many days, he gave himself wholly to the rite, summoning the destructive forces with all the fierceness of his grief. The signs came at last. The protective spirits of the spell appeared to him, it is told, bearing the proof that the power had been won. With his master's blessing, Milarepa turned his face toward home, carrying within him a weapon more terrible than any sword. It happened that, at that very time, the uncle's eldest son was to be married, and the great house of the relatives was full of guests gathered for the wedding feast. The whole clan was there, the very people who had despised his mother and driven his family into rags. Milarepa, hidden nearby, released the spell he had labored so long to master. The forces he had called gathered and struck. The great house shook, the walls gave way, and the roof came crashing down upon the celebration. 35 people died in the ruin, the uncle's sons among them, along with their guests and their finest horses. It is said that only the uncle and the aunt themselves were spared, left alive to look upon the disaster and to drink the full cup of their grief, just as they had once made others drink it. The news of the catastrophe spread, and with it came horror and rage. The villagers who had stood by or who had taken part in the old cruelties now wanted Milarepa's blood. When word reached his mother, far from being satisfied, her fury only grew. She sent word to her son that the work was not yet finished. She demanded that he punish the whole region that had scorned them. And so Milarepa, still bound to her oath, called upon his power a second time. He sent down a great storm of hail that swept across the valley and destroyed the ripening harvest in the fields, leaving the people to face hunger. The revenge his mother had thirsted for was now complete, paid for in full and overflowing. For a time, there must have been a bitter kind of triumph. The proud relatives were broken, the scornful village was punished, and the boy who had been beaten and starved now held in his hands a fearful power. By the harsh reckoning of vengeance, he had won. Yet even as the dust settled over the ruined house and the flattened fields, something began to stir in him that no spell could control. The faces of the dead would not leave him. The thought of the 35 lives, of the horses, of the families left weeping, began to press down upon his soul. The victory he had sought turned to ash in his mouth. Here we touch the deep heart of Milarepa's story, and the reason it has moved listeners for nearly 1,000 years. We are watching a young man do a monstrous thing, and we are not asked to excuse it. He was wronged, yes, cruelly and unjustly. But the path he chose multiplied the suffering many times over, answering theft with mass murder and grief with grief. His story does not pretend that pain makes us innocent. It shows instead how easily a wounded heart can become a destroying one, and how the very power we win to protect ourselves can damn us. That a man who reached such a depth could later rise to the heights of sainthood is precisely what makes his life the most hopeful story Tibet ever told. In the next chapter, we will follow Milarepa into the long night of his remorse, when the weight of what he had done finally crushed him to the ground, and when, out of that despair, the first true hunger for liberation was born. For the same fierce strength he had poured into destruction would one day, turned around completely, carry him all the way to enlightenment.